If you didn't vote, you have no right to complain. As you can guess by the title of this video, that is a non-argument. That is a fallacy. Why is it a fallacy? Well, it doesn't interact with truth at all. It makes no points. It refutes no points. It presents no evidence. It uses no logic or reasoning that's valid in any way. It's a fallacy. What it is, it's an attempt to get people to stop their discourse before it begins by setting up an arbitrary qualification to speak. And that's probably what I would end up calling the fallacy, is the arbitrary qualification fallacy. Now, the word arbitrary is important. This is different from the appeal to authority or denial of authority, which are two sides of the same coin. Because if you're appealing to authority, the authority that you're appealing to is probably related to the subject at hand. There probably is some element there. It's like, well, he has a degree in such and such, and therefore he's an expert. That's an appeal to authority. Or you do not have a degree in such and such, therefore I don't want to listen to you. This is different because there are no qualifications required to vote other than you have to be the age of 18. So just because somebody voted doesn't mean that they have any kind of authority to speak. It's pure sophistry. And there's a million reasons why somebody wouldn't vote or couldn't vote as well. And that's another reason that it's arbitrary, is that, if your kid was in the hospital the day that the polls were open and you didn't vote, it's like, now you can't complain. It's like, well, has nothing to do with their fault. Or it could be something that was your fault. You're a felon and therefore you can't vote. It's like, but that doesn't mean that you don't have something to say that's important about government, or you don't have some information to present to somebody. I can imagine lots of people in the prison system having relevant information for voters. They can complain and they didn't vote. Or probably the most likely circumstance why somebody wouldn't vote is they didn't feel that they had any meaningful choices when it came to going to the polls. When it came to choosing their representatives, they didn't have any meaningful choices. They had no choices that they liked, in other words. So if you're having to choose between two candidates you don't like, what's the point of going to the polls if you have no specific preference over them? And that's a very, very, very common thing. I've addressed that and talked about it in other videos, but whether or not I agree with somebody staying home has nothing to do with their ability to complain about what the government does at all, right? They can have extremely valid points and feel completely disenfranchised by the political system. And really, I also think part of the sophistry is to try to make people feel guilty for not buying into a political system that they don't want to be a part of or they don't like their choices in. Where it's like, you need to vote for somebody. And I've actually made that point before in like presidential elections, but it's like, you don't have to agree with me on that. I'm not going to deny your authority to speak on anything because you happen to come to a different conclusion than me. So those are all like good reasons why somebody wouldn't vote. There's also some related ones to that too, which is like, don't blame me, I voted for the other guy, which is like, I don't want to hear complaints because my situation would have been great because the other guy was great, right? Or you can't complain because you voted for him. Like, you voted for Donald Trump, therefore you can't complain when he bombed Syria. It's like, yes, you definitely can and should. That's how you get people to act differently, hopefully, is by having some sort of political input into the system. So yeah, it's pure sophistry. The point of sophistry is to really shut down conversation before it begins. The reason that so many people use sophistry is because it avoids the very real probability that you could lose an argument. If you can stop somebody from speaking or convince the third parties, it's really usually about convincing third parties. If you convince the third parties that that person's not allowed to say anything because they didn't happen to vote, then you don't have to make any valid points because your opponent isn't even allowed to speak. That's why sophistry is so powerful. That's why people use it so much. And this particular device, I think, is a fairly effective one in a lot of little circles. But don't let it get you down. You say like, hey, you're setting up an arbitrary qualification. You're not more qualified than me because you happen to show up to the polls, show up to a location and tick a box on a particular day for me. Here's a good analogy. I'll leave you with an analogy. Imagine you go to like a wedding reception and there's two meals to choose from, both of which sound bad to you, or you just don't care. It's like, do you want the steak or do you want the chicken? You're like, I don't care. Just bring me one. And so they bring you one, and you're like, you cut open the chicken and it's pink. And you're like, this is disgusting. I don't want to eat it. And they're like, you didn't make a choice, so therefore you can't complain when somebody gives you one of two arbitrary choices that you didn't like, neither of which you cared about. You know, it's like, no, of course somebody can complain no matter what. Or it's like, if I chose the steak and it comes and it's bad, now I'm allowed to complain. Or they'd be like, you can't complain, you chose the steak. It's like, when do I get to complain? When do I get to say something negative about a situation that I perceive? The answer is you always get to, as long as you're able to shut down the sophists and expose them for what they are, which is manipulative avoiders of truth. You guys have a great one. Don't forget, I do have a book coming out this week. It's called Water of Awakening. Here's what the paperback looks like. You can grab a copy. The ebook's 99 cents. At Amazon.com, and the links will be down below in the description. You can also feel free to buy, you know, one of my older books, like Muramasa Blood Drinker. Very nice. And I do appreciate it, and I hope you guys will have a great day.